Well, just as aid organizations warn that mass starvation is spreading in Gaza, Israel finally loosened its humanitarian blockade on the territory this weekend. The military then declared a pause in fighting in 3 highly populated areas for 10 hours per day and is also set to open secure routes for aid delivery. Now, Egyptian state media confirmed Sunday that aid trucks have indeed begun entering the territory. And while the UN aid chief welcomed the move, for some it's too little too late. Organizations then skeptical that these piecemeal airdrops or truck deliveries will be able to significantly alleviate the hunger crisis now facing the territory's over 2 million residents. Charlotte Hughes.
These photos, released by the Israeli army, show what it says are preparations for a Gaza aid airdrop. On Saturday, the IDF announced it had allowed such airdrops to resume, adding that it plans to open humanitarian corridors to allow UN convoys into Gaza. It comes amid mounting calls for Israel to allow more supplies into the enclave, and after more than 100 aid agencies warned that mass starvation is spreading across the territory. As the conflict grinds on, the Palestinian Civil Defense Agency said that dozens of Gazans had been killed in Israeli bombings and shootings on Saturday, some as they sought aid. Here in Gaza City, crowds of Palestinians carried sacks of flour they managed to retrieve from a convoy. Others died on the attempt. According to eyewitnesses, they came under Israeli fire, and some in the crowd were hit by trucks.
We entered the death trap near the tanks, and we saw the soldiers, and they shot at us. They shot us with flares and bullets. Look at the young men, all the bags of flour have blood on them. Listen, we are bringing this for our children.
The IDF insisted that it fired warning shots in response to what it called an immediate threat, and that it was not aware of any casualties. Since May, more than 1,000 Gazans have been killed by Israeli forces while attempting to access aid, mostly near sites run by the Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This, according to the UN Human Rights Office.
Well, for more then, let's take a listen to some reactions from residents of the Gaza Strip.
I demand a full and complete ceasefire for everyone so that we can live after the destruction we incurred. My house is gone. My sons were martyred. My livelihood is gone. I had a factory and it's gone. Everything's gone. My livelihood, my health, all gone due to the war. My legs were injured. I demand a truce.
Aid should enter in a logical way. When aid is airdropped, it causes injuries and damage, even massacres on the street. We woke up early in the morning so that we could get supplies, and we should get it in a legitimate way from an institution, an NGO or UNRWA. We are coming here for death. People die here every day. If 1, 2, 10 boxes are dropped, all these people can't even take them. Only 1 or 2 people will get the aid.
Well, for more on this, then, I have the pleasure of welcoming Joel Carmel on the show from Tel Aviv. He is the advocacy director of Breaking the Silence, which is an organization established by Israeli veterans in 2004 with the aim of informing the public about the realities and consequences of the occupation. Joel, thank you so much for joining us today. So I want to start then with the latest. What do you make of Israel's announcement on Sunday, the pausing of military operations for 10 hours a day in order to allow new aid corridors? Do you think this will make any difference at all?
Thank you for having me. And I would say that what we're seeing, the latest developments in Israel's announcement, is effectively an acknowledgement of the failure of this previous phase, the use of GHF, which is a completely fictitious body, didn't exist beforehand and doesn't have any kind of expertise in distributing aids. So I think everyone is at the point that they understand, including the IDF, including within the Israeli government, that this was a completely ineffective way of saving the situation. And now Israel's being forced to do something, but I really doubt that this will be enough. And ultimately, if we want to bring some kind of end to this catastrophe in Gaza at the moment, there's no way other than to bring a full ceasefire.
We've seen the starvation crisis in Gaza attract more international attention in recent days. It's even led some Western leaders to issue much harsher criticisms of Israel than they have thus far. But has the humanitarian situation changed anything in Israeli public opinion? Have you seen the discourse there evolve at all?
I think there has been a slight shift. It's becoming harder and harder for anyone to ignore. And even though I think the Israeli media does a huge disservice to us Israelis by not really reporting what's going on in Gaza, it's becoming harder even for them to ignore the horrifying images that we're seeing from Gaza, which are broadcast widely abroad. And I think, the average Israeli is becoming more exposed to that kind of thing, which is maybe one of the reasons that has led to this small change. But unfortunately, I think for most Israelis, it's still very difficult to acknowledge any kind of, the reality of Gaza, while there's still very much a lot of trauma here in Israel, and people don't really want to hear, unfortunately. And for organizations like ours, Breaking the Silence, we're trying to get that message across that, even with our trauma and despite our trauma and because of our trauma, we also need to acknowledge what's happening on the other side.
So, Joel, I do want to turn specifically to the work of Breaking the Silence. As you mentioned there, of course, you use testimonies from Israeli soldiers themselves who have served in the occupied territories to try and bring attention to the occupation. Now, based on the information that Breaking the Silence has gathered since October 7th of 2023, how have the Israeli military's methods evolved in this war compared to others? And what have some of the biggest revelations of this war been thus far?
Well, I think a lot of what we're seeing during this war, which I don't really think that war is the appropriate term to use anymore, because it's so one-sided at this point for sure. But I think a lot of the strategy and the tactics are in ways a continuation of things that we've saw before over many years, many rounds of these military operations, going back a couple of decades already, except that now just everything is in totally new dimensions. Once the 7th of October happened and the atrocities that we suffered, that was kind of like an unmasking moment for many Israelis and definitely decision makers here in Israel, and allowed everything to kind of go on steroids. We've seen, for example, the use of Palestinians as human shields. That's one of the things that we were part of exposing. People who were taken from the humanitarian corridor often, and then forced to go into potentially booby-trapped homes and tunnels in order to be the ones who blow up instead of the soldiers. So that's the kind of thing that we haven't seen since the Second Intifada, and it was disallowed by the Israeli Supreme Court, and now it's become kind of a regular occurrence during the course of these last 21 months. We've seen incredible abuse of Palestinian detainees in places like State Eman, which is a detention center here in Israel. We saw wholesale destruction of entire areas, which, everyone who's paying attention can see the images, but there's something particularly powerful about hearing the soldiers' testimonies about this kind of thing that really shows how systematic it was and how much this was really an order from the very, very beginning of the war to create entire spaces of the Gaza Strip where Palestinians wouldn't be able to come back to at the end. That's just a few tasters.
Joel, you mentioned earlier that part of the work is, of course, to bring attention to these things amongst Israelis in particular. How is your work now perceived in Israel? You're on France 24 right now today. Are you often invited, for example, to Israeli media outlets to speak about your reports and what they've revealed?
I wish I could say that we are respected in the same way within Israel as we are in the international community, where we have, a lot of support and a lot of people asking for interviews with us, for example. Unfortunately, there has been a long-standing delegitimization campaign led by the Israeli right, from politicians to right-wing NGOs to the right-wing media, which is very powerful here in Israel, all of which has tried to defame us and really take away the legitimacy that we have, try to show us as being in some way foreign agents or that we are making up our sources just because we publish them anonymously in order to protect the identity of the testifiers who come forward to us. So unfortunately, that campaign has has borne fruit, and many people don't want to hear what we have to say. Obviously, our job is to put a mirror up in front of Israeli society and to say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're responsible for, this is what we're sending soldiers to do. And that's always going to be difficult for people to accept. But I think as time has gone on and the terrible situation in Gaza has only gotten worse, I think there are more people who are willing to hear those messages. And I hope that we'll be able to have an influence. I think we are having an influence within Israeli society, despite all of the difficulties.
On at least 2 occasions this year, Joel, the Israeli military reported a sharp increase in suicides amongst soldiers. How much of that do you think is linked precisely to some of the rules of engagement in Gaza and some of the things that your reports have revealed that you mentioned earlier?
Well, I have to say that I'm not an expert on mental health, so I can just say from the way I see things, or the way we as an organization see things, it's clear that soldiers are being exposed to more and more traumatic things, for sure, and they're being sent to do things that are maybe they would never have imagined themselves doing. I mean, we see rules of engagement which are completely, I think loose isn't even the right word. It's almost non-existent in parts of Gaza. People are told to shoot, in many situations to kill, any male of fighting age in entire parts of the Gaza Strip which are declared no-go zones for Palestinians. And that kind of really does put soldiers into a position where they're doing atrocious things. I'm not here to say that the soldiers are the victims. We are definitely, as an Israeli society and as soldiers, we're definitely paying a price. But the victims of this are the Palestinian people who have to really suffer the consequences of that. But yes, we are certainly paying the price, and part of that is in the mental health of soldiers, and I think that's going to have a long-term effect on our society going forward many, many years from now.
As a final question for you, Joel, similar to the previous one, this past spring there was a wave of dissent amongst Israeli reservists, particularly that came amid a general sense of kind of declining support for the war. Has that disappeared altogether? I mean, why do you think, especially given that you speak, I know, anonymously to Israeli soldiers, why do you think there's so little resistance from service members given the scale of abuse that Breaking the Silence and others, frankly, have reported on?
I think there is that resistance, and as I said, it's very difficult within Israeli society to speak out and to be critical of the war or Israeli policy as regards the Palestinians in general, because of this delegitimization campaign that's been going on for so long. But I think that in many ways we're seeing kind of grey refusal, or if you could say kind of undefined or undeclared refusal to go to reserve duty in many cases, where it's difficult for people to come out and outwardly say, I'm against what's going on, but people are finding all sorts of excuses. People are saying, I can't do it now. I can't be away from my family this long. I can't give up on my business. And certainly those are things that are true as well. But I think for many Israelis who find it difficult to outwardly criticize, they're finding ways out of going into the military. There aren't precise numbers on this because the military spokesman has only really released very vague things about, people are still coming in there with a lot of enthusiasm. But I think under the surface, there's a lot of people who are feeling very uncomfortable about what's going on and are finding ways to get out of it.
Joel Carmel, Advocacy Director of Breaking the Silence, thank you so very much for coming on the show today.